The sky was silent, but the ground screamed of war. Thick, black smoke curled into the red clouds above as the alien ship hovered over a ruined valley, where even the stones looked wounded by time and fire. Commander Vec tilted his head, studying the destruction below, his glowing red eyes scanning every inch of the burnt terrain once supposed to be lifeless, but now filled with signs of resistance. His second-in-command Jor moved beside him, whispering with disbelief, no sign of technology. No defense systems, no colonies, yet something destroyed the probe teams in seconds. Vec did not answer because he had already seen it. The crushed armor of his best warriors torn apart with something sharper than claws, more brutal than plasma. He stepped out of the ship, his boots sinking into the ash of a forgotten Warvik. Came from Zartos, a death world so cruel it forged its children from storms, lava, and beasts with bones like steel. He had never tasted fear until today, as his squad spread out with heavy weapons drawn. They found more than wreckage. They found tracks, humanoid, lightweight, but fast and fresh. They were not alone here, and that meant the rumors were not lies. Suddenly a scream tore through the thick air. The squad turned, but one of their own was gone. Just gone, no warning, no blast, just silence where he once stood. Ground showed no signs of a fight, but the blood told another story. Then a shadow leapt from the rocks, fast like lightning, silent like death. The alien soldiers opened fire. Bright blasts of energy lit up the dust storm, but the figure danced between them. One by one, the squad dropped, unable to follow its movements. Then the figure stood still at last. It was no beast, no monster. It was a man, human, covered in dirt and wounds, but standing tall, with eyes that burned not with rage but with control. He held a broken metal pipe, his only weapon. Commander Vec raised his blaster, but the human did not flinch. Vec stepped forward slowly, watching the human's stance, his muscles, his breathing. "Are the one who killed them?" The human did not reply. He only nodded. "Once you are alone, yet you fight like a swarm again." No words, just silence. Vec signaled to capture. Warriors charged in with stun rods. The human dropped the first with a leg sweep, smashed the second in the throat, and twisted the third's arm until it snapped like dry wood. Then he stopped, breathing heavily, but still calm. Vec raised his hand, calling off the attackee. Nuffy walked toward the human, studying his scars, his eyes, his calm madness. "Who are youth?" Human spoke at last with a voice like gravel and fire. "Name is Callan." Vec stepped closer, now face to face with this fragile-shaped being that just crippled his death squad. "This world was labeled abandoned." Callan shrugged. "It was until they tried to take it. They not you." Vec gestured at the ruined battlefield. "You speak of others." Callan's jaw clenched as he nodded. "Another race, pirates or slavers maybe. They came, they burned, they took everything, but I fought back alone. They left some in peace." Vec did not believe in weakness, but this human was not strong in the usual sense. He was built from suffering, from loss, from survival, and that made him dangerous. Callan pointed to the hills beyond. "There are more ruins, more stories, but you should know this world is not kind. Even your kind can bleed." Vec looked back at his fallen warriors, at the way they screamed before dying. Knew now this mission was not a simple check and clear. This was a test, and humans were not myths anymore. They were real. They were Deathworlders, and maybe, just maybe, more deadly than his own. Callan turned and walked away, disappearing into the ruins like a ghost born from Warvik. Did not stop him. He only whispered to himself, "We are not alone anymore, and the galaxy does not know what is coming." The alien ship hung low over the jagged rocks and scorched earth, where Callan had disappeared like a shadow swallowed by the ruins. Commander Vec stood with his crew, silently watching the place where their strongest warriors had fallen without warning. Their pride was wounded, but their curiosity burned brighter than ever. Callan had vanished into the wasteland, but his presence lingered like a storm about to break. Vec knew this human was not just a survivor, but a weapon honed by pain and struggle. He sent out search teams, yet no trace was found except faint footprints and broken branches of the earth itself. Tried to hide him. Days passed with nothing, until one cold dawn, a scout stumbled into the camp bleeding and gasping for life. The story was terrifying. The human had attacked again alone, but this time he spared the scout, warning him with a growl that echoed with danger and fury. He was no mindless beast, but a force with a purpose. Vec called an emergency meeting. His face was hard, but his eyes showed unease. The human was proving stronger and smarter than expected. No Deathworlder had survived here before, much less fought back like this. He paced before the holographic map of the planet, tracing the lines of ruins and smoke. "We must capture him alive," Vec said. "Not just to kill, but to understand, to know what made him so fierce. We underestimated humans, and that was a mistake. The aliens set traps in narrow canyons and covered the rocky hills with sensors. They waited silently like predators stalking prey. Yet Callan did not fall into any trap. He moved with a quiet grace, mastering the land as if it was part of him. Each night, the fires of the aliens were disturbed by his presence, unseen but felt. One evening, Vec decided to take a risk. He went out alone with only his trusted blade and minimal armor. He wanted to see the human with his own eyes, to feel the threat face to face. The desert wind was cold, but his heart burned with anticipation. He found Callan sitting on a broken wall, looking at the distant horizon. The man's eyes held stories of loss and battles fought in silence. Vec stepped closer without weapon, drawn, signaling respect. "You survived by killing. I said you could have ended us when you had the chance, but you did not." Why? Callan looked at him, calm, steady. "Survival is more than killing. It is knowing when to fight, when to wait, and when to protect those who matter. I fight because I must. Because this world took everything from me, and I will not let it take more." Vec was surprised by the words. He had met many warriors, but few who spoke like this. The human was not just a killer. He was a protector, a soul, broken but unyielding. They talked for hours about their worlds, about pain and strength, about what it meant to be a Deathworlder. Callan told of Earth, a planet harsh and unforgiving, where humans were forged by firestorms, floods, and war. He spoke of families lost and hope found in the darkest hours. Vec began to understand. The human was a mirror of his own kind, but different. A creature shaped by suffering and yet filled with compassion. The question grew inside him. What if humans were not enemies but allies? Before dawn, Callan vanished, leaving only footprints and a promise in the wind. "You will see soon," Vec whispered to himself. "The galaxy will never be the same again." Back in camp, the aliens prepared for the next encounter, ready to fight, ready to learn, and ready to face a new kind of Deathworlder, born from humanity itself. Deathworld meets Deathworld. Alien ship had returned to orbit, while below the ruined planet whispered its dark secrets. Commander Vec and his crew gathered around the holomap, projecting images of a strange blue world called Earth. The information came from captured data from human transmissions and ancient records salvaged from deep space. The pictures showed cities in ruin, storms that swallowed whole lands, endless deserts, frozen wastelands, and creatures surviving in brutal ways. Vec listened as his science officer described Earth as a death world harsher than their own Zartos, filled with dangers, unknown and relentless challenges. The humans had survived floods that drowned mountains, fires that burned forests to ash, plagues that swept through millions, and wars that shattered civilizations, yet they endured and grew stronger from the pain. The room was silent, but the weight of what they learned pressed heavily on everyone. The aliens who once believed themselves the strongest Deathworlders now faced the truth that humans were forged in firestorms and cruelty, equal or greater than their own trials. The pride of their species was challenged for the first time in the Storager. Looked troubled. He asked Vec if this knowledge changed their mission. Vec replied with a slow, steady voice, "Yes, it did. We cannot treat humans as weak or inferior. They are dangerous and unpredictable like us, but with something else, something deeper. The strength to survive not just by force, but by hope and will." The crew watched more footage showing human resilience. Their technology was not always advanced, but their spirit was unmatched. Scenes of rescue after disasters, families rebuilding, homes, fighters standing tall despite wounds and loss. This was a species that bled, yet did not break. Vic remembered his encounter with Callan. The human had shown him pain and kindness, fury and control all at once. He realized humans had a complex nature that combined violence with compassion, a balance the aliens had never truly understood. The alien soldiers began to debate. The warriors wanted to prove their might in combat against the humans, while the scholars wished to learn from them. The commanders saw the potential for an alliance, but knew trust was fragile in a galaxy where survival meant power. Vake decided to send a message to Callan, a signal through coded transmissions, hoping to find a way to communicate beyond the battlefield. He wanted to test if the human was willing to speak and perhaps share what made them survive. This Deathworld and many others' days passed without answer, but one night the message returned with a simple response. No words, only coordinates leading to an ancient ruin deep in the wasteland. Vec gathered his elite team and prepared to meet the humans face to face again. As they traveled, the harsh environment tested them. The winds howled like angry spirits and the ground shifted beneath their feet, yet they pushed forward, driven by curiosity and the need to understand this mysterious enemy, who might be a future ally or a deadly foe. Reaching the ruins, they found signs of recent life, human footprints around broken walls and burned camps. Vec felt a strange respect for those who lived here, struggling daily against the planet's cruelty. The humans were survivors born from pain and hope intertwined. Suddenly a group of humans emerged from the shadows, led by Callan. His face was weathered, but his eyes held the same fire that had challenged the aliens before. The tension was thick. But Vec stepped forward, extending a hand in peace. Callan looked at it for a moment, then shook it firmly. The gesture was simple but powerful, a bridge between two Deathworld species who both understood what it meant to endure and fight for life. In a hostile galaxy, they talked long into the night, sharing stories of their planets, their losses and victories. The humans told of their wars with alien invaders and how they learned to adapt and overcome. The aliens spoke of their battles on Zartos and their code of honor that bound them as warriors. A new understanding began to grow between them. The fear and hatred melted into cautious respect. The knowledge that they were not so different. After all, that strength came in many forms, and sometimes from the deepest scars. As dawn broke, the alliance was born silently in the ruins of a world that once seemed forgotten. The two Deathworlders stood side by side, ready to face the future together, whatever it might bring. The challenge. The sun rose slowly over the cracked horizon, casting long shadows across the ruined landscape, where humans and aliens had gathered in uneasy peace. Commander Veek stood tall, but his mind was restless. The respect he felt for Callan was deep, but the warriors among his crew wanted more. They wanted a true test, a fight to prove who was stronger in the brutal world they both called home. Among the aliens was Korek, the fiercest champion of Zartos, known for his strength and ruthless skill in battle. He could not accept the idea that a human might match his power or outlast his endurance. Korek challenged Callan openly, without fear or doubt. This was a fight for pride, honor, and survival. The humans watched silently as Callan stepped forward, calm, steady, and ready. The air was thick with tension, and the ruins echoed with the memories of battles past. Neither side wanted bloodshed, but they both knew this duel would shape the future of their peoples. The ground trembled as the two warriors circled each other. Korek's muscles rippled like storms about to break, while Callan moved with the quiet confidence of one who had faced death many times. His eyes locked with Korek's, burning with determination and pain held in control. The first clash was brutal. Korek struck like lightning, his blows heavy and powerful, but Callan dodged with speed and skill. His movements were precise, calculated, using every weakness he could find. The battle was not just strength, but a dance of survival, and while Korek growled, frustrated, as Callan refused to break, his endurance was unlike anything he had seen before. The human took hits that would have shattered others, and kept coming back each time stronger and more focused. The pain did not stop. It fueled him. At one moment, Callan caught Korek off guard, twisting his arm and sending the alien crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped. The great champion was humbled, But Callan did not strike the final blow. Instead, he reached out his hand. Offering respect and mercy, the gesture shocked the aliens and humans, alike. Karek looked at Callan with a mix of rage and awe. Then slowly he accepted the hand and rose to his feet. The duel ended not with death, but with understanding, a lesson in strength beyond muscle or weapons. Vec stepped forward, proud and relieved. The challenge had shown the true nature of humans: fierce and compassionate, strong and wise. They were not just survivors, but warriors with hearts capable of both rage and mercy. Callan spoke softly but firmly. I do not fight for glory or pride. I fight to protect those I love, to live another day, to honor the pain that shaped me. This world has taken much from me, but it has also given me strength. I fight for life, not death. The alien crew nodded in silence, realizing that the human's power was more than physical. It was a spirit born from hardship that refused to be broken, a force that could unite not just battle and blood, but hope and peace. The alliance between humans and aliens grew stronger that day, built not just on survival, but respect and trust. The challenge had tested their limits and revealed the truth that even in the harshest deathworlds, the strongest were those who fought with heart. As night fell over the ruins, the two species sat together around the fire, sharing stories, laughter and silent promises of a future forged in the fire of their shared struggles. They knew the road, the human history. The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows on the faces of humans and aliens alike as they sat in the ruins, sharing tales from their worlds. Commander Vec listened closely as Callan began to speak of his people, his voice steady but filled with memories that stretched back through centuries. Spoke of Earth, a planet battered by nature and war, where humans learned to survive against all odds. Through floods that swallowed cities and storms that shattered lands, they built their homes again, stronger and wiser. Each generation carried the scars of the past, but also the hope for a better future. Callan told of ancient wars, where humanity faced enemies from the stars, cruel and relentless. They fought not with the power of gods, but with the strength of their will and the bonds of family. They lost much, but never their spirit. Each story was a lesson in resilience and sacrifice. The aliens heard of dark times when diseases swept across continents and millions died. Yet humans cared for each other despite the pain. They found ways to heal and to comfort their broken souls. Music, poetry, and art became their weapons against despair, showing that survival was more than just fighting, it was living with meaning. Vec felt a strange ache listening to the stories. He had known death and battle, but not the depth of human suffering and hope. The humans were not just warriors, but creators, dreamers, and lovers. Their strength was woven with kindness and pain, making them something more than simple fighters. The crew shared their own histories of Zartos and other death worlds, their battles for honor and survival. Their stories were brutal and proud, but lacked the softness that humans carried, a softness born from enduring not just the physical, but the emotional storms of life. Jor, the second in command, spoke of the honor in battle and the sacred code that guided them. Yet he admitted he envied the humans for their ability to find light even in the darkest moments. Their music echoed in the ruins, touching hearts hardened by war. As the night deepened, the bond between humans and aliens grew. The walls built by fear and ignorance slowly crumbled, replaced by understanding and respect. Theirs was a connection born from shared pain and the desire to rise above it. Callan smiled, tired but hopeful. For the first time he saw allies, not enemies, standing beside him. He knew the road ahead was filled with challenges, but also with the promise of unity. They were no longer alone in the galaxy facing the darkness. Vec looked around at his crew and the humans beside them. They had learned much about each other, not just as fighters, but as beings shaped by their worlds and their pasts. The alliance was no longer just a strategy, but a bond of hearts and minds ready to face whatever dangers came next. As dawn approached, the fire died down, leaving only the stars to witness the new chapter in the story of Deathworlders. Two species, once strangers, now brothers, united by survival strength and the hope that together they could change the fate of the galaxy. The greater enemy. The night air was heavy with silence, But far beyond the peaceful ruins, a new threat was rising in the depths of space. A dark fleet moved with deadly intent, seeking to crush both humans and aliens before they could unite. Commander Vec received the warning with cold eyes, knowing this enemy was unlike any they had faced before. Ancient force was merciless, ruthless, and beyond comprehension. It fed on destruction and fear, consuming whole worlds, leaving nothing but ashes and despair. The humans called it the Voidborn, a shadow from the stars that sought to devour life itself. The aliens knew it as the devourer, the end of all things. Vec gathered his commanders and human leaders, including Callan, to plan their defense. They stood together, not as enemies, but as brothers ready to face extinction, united by necessity and the hope to survive. The galaxy trembled as two Deathworld species prepared for war against a greater enemy. Voidborn attacked, swiftly descending on border planets with overwhelming power. Their ships dark as nightmares, their weapons tearing through shields and armor. The aliens expected the humans to scatter, but instead they fought back fiercely, refusing to yield their homes and lives. Callan led a strike team into the heart of the battle, his voice steady, inspiring courage and fury. His soldiers moved like shadows, striking where the enemy was weakest. They used every trick, every piece of knowledge gained from their harsh planet to outsmart the Voidborn. Aliens watched in awe as the humans risked everything, showing no fear even when faced with death. The bravery and determination stunned them, breaking old prejudices and doubts. The humans were not fragile beings, but warriors forged in fire, ready to burn bright even in the darkest night. Vec and Callan coordinated attacks across the system, combining alien technology with human ingenuity. Their alliance became a beacon of hope, a symbol that even the harshest Deathworlders could stand together against annihilation. The fight was brutal and relentless, testing every limit of strength and will in the midst of chaos. Callan found himself face to face with a monstrous Voidborn warrior. The creature was a towering nightmare of claws and teeth, but Callan did not hesitate. He fought with everything he had, fueled by the love for his people and the hope for peace. The battle raged, but slowly the tide turned. The alliance of humans and aliens pushed back the Voidborn, forcing them to retreat into the darkness from where they came. The cost was high, but the victory was sweeter because it was shared, because it was hard won together. The galaxy had witnessed something new. The meeting of two Deathworld species, not to destroy, but to protect, not to conquer, but to unite. A force born from suffering and hope, a force that could change the course of history forever. Vec looked at Callan with respect and gratitude, knowing that this war was only the beginning. But with humans by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. The future belonged to those who dared to fight and survive even against the greatest. Darkness, the alliance of Deathworlds, battlefield was silent. Now only the echo of past battles whispered through the scorched earth. Humans and aliens stood side by side, their faces marked by fatigue, but their eyes shining with resolve. Commander Vec looked over the gathered warriors, his heart heavy with pride and hope. They had faced darkness together and survived stronger for it. Callan stepped forward, the human leader, his voice carrying the weight of countless struggles and the promise of a new beginning. We once believed we were alone in this vast galaxy, that our strength was unmatched. But meeting you taught us that strength is not just power or weapons. It is unity, courage, and the will to protect those we love. Vec nodded, his eyes reflecting the firelight. The Zartos warriors bowed their heads in respect before the humans, acknowledging the truth in Callan's words. They were no longer rivals or strangers, but brothers bound by trials and triumphs, born on Deathworlds, fierce and unforgiving. A new era dawned as the alliance was forged in the ruins of war and the ashes of fear. Together they pledged to defend their worlds against any threat, no matter how great. The galaxy had witnessed the birth of a force unlike any before, one that combined honor and heart, survival and sacrifice. Stories would be told of this day when two Deathworld species laid down their weapons, not to surrender, but to build a future where humans and aliens stood united, not just by survival, but by respect and friendship. The scars they carried were badges of honor, reminders of the battles that shaped them. Vec extended his hand to Callan, a symbol of peace and partnership. The human grasped it firmly, their grip strong and steady, like the bond they now shared. They looked out at the stars, knowing their journey was far from over, but confident in the strength they had found in each other. As the night sky shimmered with distant suns, the Alliance celebrated quietly around the fires, their laughter and stories weaving a new legacy. Together they were no longer alone, no longer the only Deathworlders. They were a force that would shape the future and stand as guardians of hope in a galaxy filled with shadows. Alliance of Deathworld, the battlefield lay quiet beneath a sky heavy with stars, where humans and aliens gathered, their bodies tired, but spirits unbroken. Commander Vec stood tall among them, his gaze steady, filled with pride, born from trials and survival. The war was over, but the fight for the future was just beginning. Callan spoke softly, his voice carrying the weight of endless battles and the hope for peace. We thought we were the only Deathworlders, the strongest and the fiercest, alone in this vast galaxy, but meeting you showed us strength is more than power or weapons. It is unity, the courage to stand together and protect what matters. Mas Vec nodded his head slowly as the warriors of Zartos lowered their weapons in respect. The bond between the two species was no longer forged by conflict but by understanding and honor. They were no longer enemies, but brothers bound by struggle and hope. A new dawn broke over the horizon as the Alliance was sealed in the ruins of war and the ashes of fear. Together humans and aliens vowed to guard their worlds from any darkness that dared to rise. The galaxy witnessed the birth of a force stronger than any weapon, a force built on trust, sacrifice, and the unbreakable will to survive. Stories would be told for generations of the day when two Deathworld species chose peace over destruction, when scars became symbols of strength and scars healed with friendship and respect. Their legacy would inspire all who faced impossible odds to find hope and fight on. Vec reached out his hand to Callan, a silent promise of peace and partnership. The human grasped it with steady strength, their hands locking like the bond that now united them. They looked up at the stars, knowing the road ahead was long, but their hearts were fearless as the fires flickered softly around them. Laughter and stories mingled in the night, weaving a new future. Together they were no longer alone, no longer the only Deathworlders. They were a force that would protect the galaxy and stand as beacons of hope against the coming darkness. The end.